Welcome to Hameen Royale. This is Eric Grissom.
And I'm Dan Johnson. Eric and I will be rewatching the iconic Twin Peaks from the pilot through the return and everything in between.
If this is your first time watching, or if you're a longtime fan, you can watch along with us as we dive deep into the strange and wonderful world of Twin Peaks.
We live inside a dream.
Today on Meanwhile, you thought you were just getting Brent Simon, but no, there is a surprise. It's author, musician, documentarian, part-time busboy, Mr. Scott Ryan, who, as we speak, is gearing up for the premiere of his new film, The Double R Dream, on August 13th at the North Bend Theater. This film documents the last 6 days of Scott Ryan as Twede's Cafe busboy. And here he is. I'm looking at him. He's flipping a domino in his hand. But thank God, friends, he is not sucking on that domino. Welcome to Meanwhile, Scott Ryan.
Thank you so much for having me. I love that intro. I did say from here until I die, my first credit is always going to be I'm a busboy at Twede's Cafe. That is my number one credit.
Yeah, that is literally a double R dream.
It truly is.
All right, so to start off with, can you tell our listeners a bit more about what your film covers?
Yeah, I mean, basically what happened is I went out to the Real Twin Peaks event with the idea that I would help out Max and Rachel, who own Tweed's, and that I would work as a busboy during that weekend. And I think everyone thought I was kind of kidding and that it was just like a bit. But I really wanted to work. And she was kind of like, oh, do you just want to be like a host or something? And I was like, no. I want to slice the cherry pie. I want to make the coffee. I want to work. So my good friend Brian Cursor, who many of you might know him as Dougpa, he ran the Dougpa Forum, he said he wanted to film me doing this for a documentary he was working on. And I said, sure, as long as it's okay with Rachel. And Rachel said, okay. But then he couldn't come that weekend. So I started to film things with the idea that I would help him out, and it ended up, I stole his idea, man. Now I got the documentary, and Dougpa's crying in the corner.
But Scott, you just said it into a microphone. Now this episode will be at the center of the Dougpa lawsuit, soon to come.
I made him an executive producer. He's an executive producer on mine. So in the very same way as David Lynch stole Wild at Heart from Monty Montgomery, I stole the Double R Dream from Dougpa.
Man's attitude goes some ways, the way his life will be.
Now, so who did you work on it with? Because obviously you are working as a busboy, so you're not filming yourself unless it's shot in a completely chaotic manner. Who was with you as far as your crew?
Well, there was no crew. It was an iPhone. But Stephen Miller, first and foremost, he is the other executive producer of this documentary. His footage is incredible. I mean, he's got a great camera. He came in all the time and photographed. He came in every day. He was even camped out there, so you actually see me show up for work the first time. My wife, Jen, would come in and film stuff. I asked everyone I worked with, hey, can you take this? Can you hold this? I set the camera up I'd set my phone on the side while I was doing stuff. I've been making movies since I was 18, so I'm a real guerrilla-style filmmaker.
Now, had you bussed before, though?
No.
Did you come to... So you'd never even done it, so it's all new.
I worked at Arby's for 4 years in high school and college. It's the best job I ever had until this one. I ran the drive-thru at Arby's, so I had some restaurant experience, but I didn't tell Rachel that I had never been a waiter and I had never been a busboy.
How long did that set? Because you said they were a little hesitant at first, and I think you said it's owned by Rachel Bennett and Max Spears.
Right. Yeah, they were reticent. They were a little nervous. But I kept telling them, I'm really going to work. And I worked. So, I wish I had more footage because I wish I could have filmed me more, but I didn't have that much time because I was working. So, the documentary is 44 minutes. And I literally use every piece of video footage that there is. There's nothing on the cutting room floor. People who've seen it have said, like, oh, I wish it was longer. And I was like, unless I put it in slow motion, it cannot be longer.
And it's also, as you mentioned, it's during, it's in February, right? So it's Twin Peaks Day that's a week down there, right? So it's full of fans. I imagine it was pretty busy most of the time that you were working,
yes.
Right?
Oh, it was so busy. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing that. People probably recognize you, right? Because there's a ton of Twin Peaks fans there. The clientele know the Scott Ryan when you see a Scott Ryan, or as Alan Thicke may say, a lot of peekers.
Now, I was never a Trekkie myself, but I do confess I am a peeker.
But does that make it easier for you? Like, because, you're walking into a new business, doing a movie, so there's some level of stress, I think, on you. There's some form of performance that's going on, but you're also doing a job.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is I'm crazy. So I'm performing all the time, whether anyone's around or a camera is playing. I really am this nuts in real life. So I just was me. So there was none of that. Yes, there were tons of Twin Peaks people there, and they did recognize me, and that is very funny. That is in the movie. There are people who are baffled by what is going on because I also was hosting events out there. So I really went from being on stage with the great Harley Payton to doing a book signing to then serving someone coffee and pie. And they're like, who is this guy and what has happened?
Yeah, Scott Ryan fell on hard times after the Q&A session, and now he's refilling the ice machine.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was. And I will real quick tell my favorite story. This is not in the doc because there wasn't footage and it's too sad. But there was a guy out there who wanted to do a Twin Peaks book. And somebody said, you need to talk to Scott Ryan. He runs a publishing company. I pitched the guy my company. We talked a little bit about his book. He's so excited. 10 minutes later, he's sitting at the counter and I'm pouring his coffee. And he looked at me with the saddest face, like that look of disappointment that I've seen in my children's eyes on Christmas morning, where he called his wife and said, we got a publisher and he's a busboy.
And you're just covered in ketchup.
And, totally.
Yeah, that's you watched his dreams crumble on that one.
And I didn't even say anything to him. I didn't even try to get out. I didn't say, look, I'm doing this for a movie. I didn't do any of that. I just let it go. And I didn't get that book, by the way.
So he's got to know. You got to know. You throw a rock. You're doing a Q&A somewhere or interviewing someone. So that's really on him, I think.
Well, you throw a rock, you hit a bottle if you say Leo Johnson.
Would you please put on the kitchen mittens?
Right, exactly.
Are we going to show a clip? I've always wanted to go on a show and do a clip. Are we showing the clip? And don't edit this part out either. Let's leave in this part.
Oh, I'm going to edit stuff out. It's just going to be you and silence. I'm taking myself out of this thing. Mr. Ryan, why don't you send us up with a clip here?
Oh, I'm sorry. The studio picked the clip. I don't even know what the clip is. I always hated when they said that because they knew what the clip was.
They knew
Come
what the clip was.
on. It's ridiculous.
They knew what the clip was.
They knew. This clip is Stephen Miller sort of wondering. The great Stephen Miller does the Twin Peaks blog. He's in the doc. He's wondering if I can keep up with the young people.
Could Scott actually keep up with the younger, non-AARP eligible employees at the cafe.
He was so much fun to work with. Like, he does his job so well. I think a lot of people thought that he wasn't actually going to be bussing, but he was seriously one of the best bussers I've ever worked with, and he was so much fun.
Bussing was my main job, and unless I got distracted by Laura Palmer, I cleared off the tables as soon as someone left. But I also had to watch for new customers as they came in, find them a table, get them menus, silverware, water, and see if they wanted some coffee. While that was going on, I had to constantly keep an eye on every table to be sure they weren't in need for a refill.
It was just so weird to see him behind the counter. But as the week wore on, it became so normal and so cool, and he did an incredible job.
How about that? I mean, have you ever felt more like Johnny Carson?
I've seen Twin Peaks a number of times. It's a very interesting, almost bizarre in certain aspects.
You've seen it?
Oh, yeah.
Saw Agent Ivy, so it was nice to see some familiar faces as well. So,
yeah, there's a lot of familiar faces in this, including some surprise guests as well that will be very pleasing to Twin Peaks fans.
What is the worst thing that you picked up off the table, though?
Nothing. I never thought it was gross at all. There wasn't. Everybody was very polite. It never was gross, actually. People really, I mean, you want to eat all your food there because it's so good. They want the pie. I never got sick of like slicing cherry pie or bringing it out. I loved it. I want to do it. I asked my wife, can I quit and go be a busboy in Washington? But I guess we have a house payment.
Yeah, it's got to be there. Like you're not going to walk into any diner and expect the same clientele. I would say. So yeah, if you're going to the Double R, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if I lived there, I would be begging Rachel, can I do this every Saturday or Friday nights or something. I would do it once a week. Now, I am old, so I have to say I'm old. And I was in some pain at night.
It's hard work, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I worked, I forget how many hours now, but I worked 6 straight days, 8 hours a day or something. I closed every night.
That's a long shift, 8-hour shifts
yeah.
On your feet?
Yeah, on my feet.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, it was dumb. And Rachel kept saying, people don't work this much. And I was like, I want to do it. I was dumb.
But, I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this now, you know the location. It was, the Marti Cafe when they were shooting the pilot and Fire Walk with Me. And then they obviously shot the return there, too. For you, literally, it's the Double R dream. Like, you're walking into something you love so dearly, and you're now inside of it. It has to be a wild feeling.
Well, and I asked Rachel on Twin Peaks Day, February 24th, could I hook my phone up to the sound system and play my Twin Peaks music of Double R, music that played in the Double R, because I have the Twin Peaks archive from doing my Always Music in the Air book, and she said, sure. So I came through the sliding door to Laura Palmer's song in Fire Walk with Me, the do-do-do-do. I mean, I came through, like, what? There's never going to be anything better than that. Never.
So it's 8 hours of smiles, I imagine, of just a beaming Scott Ryan.
Yeah, there's actually a part in the documentary where Stephen Miller says he had never seen me smile this much. And then there are pictures of me, which made me uncomfortable. As the director, I had to let go of the things that I wouldn't do in real life or show about me. But I look so happy in these pictures that he caught candidly of me working. I was so happy for those 6 days.
Do they have a peanut butter chocolate pie? I've always heard that was very good and very popular. I don't know if that's still on the menu.
It was not on the menu when I was there, but it's their chocolate pie is spectacular. I suggested it always. The chocolate pie is the best pie they have.
Yeah, I've got to get up there one day, and maybe you'll be working there. Maybe you could pour me a cup of coffee. I could come up to the counter. That would be amazing.
I just want to say, I just remembered that there was someone who said to me, I want a refill, but I'm afraid to ask you because I think it's horrible that Scott Ryan has to bring me a cup of coffee. And I was like, no, I want to. Like, I mean, It was weird. Like, some people did feel strange about it, but I didn't. I loved serving. It was rewarding.
Yeah, and I was kind of getting at that too, because you probably know people pretty well, and then you're at a job, but they're also probably wanting to take pictures with you, but you're also busy. Like, your responsibility is also that you have to make sure that the decaf and the non-decaf coffees are ready to go, or whatever you have to do.
Well, and I never, ever wanted any of the bussers to go in the corner and say, he's not even really doing it. He doesn't wrap silverware. Did you notice that he saw the coffee pot was empty and he didn't do anything? So I doubly worked.
Yeah, you had to work twice.
I tried to beat everyone to the table to clean it off because I didn't want someone to say something like thinking that I was belittling the occupation or, taking someone's job away or any of those things. Like, I wanted to help. And the nice thing is, unless they all lied, they were interviewed for the doc. They all said that I really did do a good job.
How were they? Were they nice people? Imagine they're younger people that you're working with.
Well, they're all teenagers. They were all 18.
Did they have any concept of, oh, this guy is coming, he's going to work here for a week, and he's shooting a movie about working here for a week? Or were they learning it, on the job, as it were?
Yeah, they learned it on the job, and they were baffled by people asking me for my autograph on their books. And they were like, what is going on? That's another part of the documentary. You see, they're like, what is this? And they were like, you wrote this. Because they just didn't know. They just thought I was there to help for the Twin Peaks weekend.
Sure.
They don't care. Most of them, honestly, I think all of them but one have never seen Twin Peaks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't care. It's just their job. You know what I mean? It's their job. They're high school kids.
But we're not just here to talk about the Double R dream. Scott, you have more than one dream. You have many dreams. And one of those dreams is a book about Wild at Heart that you've told me is available right now for pre-order. Well, first off, tell the people when they can expect to get it and how they can pre-order it. And then I want to know if you got any more information on Coco Taylor singing Sycamore Trees or not. But yes, how do people get this book?
So here's the deal. You'll want to pre-order this book right now at bluerosemag.com. That's bluerosemag.com. There are only 500 of them. 100 of them are already gone. There's 400 left. Those 500 are going to be on photo paper, full color, and these are pictures you've never seen in your life because the crew gave them to me. They're slides that they didn't even ever develop before. They are beautiful. And so I did a run of 500. When they're gone, the book will go up on Amazon. It'll be in black and white. It'll be on print on demand like the other books. But I wanted to have a color one, and so I'm getting 500 of them just so I can have one. The other 499 of you, it's up to you. But when they're gone, they're gone. This isn't like a trick that I'm pulling where I'm going to eventually have other ones. No, I will never do another print run.
This is it.
You should get it because it really is beautiful picture-wise. Now, content-wise, there's over 25 interviews. And yes, the Coco Taylor thing is continued over from my last book. And she sang Sycamore Trees in Wild at Heart. And David Slusser, who was the music editor, played 40 seconds of it for me over the phone. He found it, and I heard it. So it exists. Coco Taylor sang Sycamore Trees in Wild at Heart. I am really going to try. I have no power, but I really want this to come out as a 45 on Record Store Day. And I'm doing a million things right now, but I really think they should put this out as a 45.
Yeah, and you got to hear it.
I did not get to hear all of it. I begged Slusser for it.
No, not all of it. Yeah, but you got to hear a snippet of it.
He played it for me over the phone, so it's true. She really did say. He said, "I want you to hear this. Like, it's true." And there's also paperwork, and that paperwork is in the book where you can see it. It says Sycamore Trees, Coco Taylor. It was in the first cut. Now, where that footage is, I don't know, but David Slusser has it.
Well, that was my second question. Yeah, where is that footage?
We do not know. I talked to Dean Hurley about it. Dean Hurley's in the book. And he said he's never seen it. He does not know where that footage is. But there was a recording of her singing that and Up in Flames. And it was pretty good, too. It was good.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, when you first started saying it, I was wondering, did they just record the song and they were recording the audio and then never actually shot it? But it sounds like you're saying it actually was shot. It was in a cut. It was removed, and like I guess you probably got into the Harry Dean Stanton, Grace Zabriskie, Too Hot for TV deleted scene. It was cut at some point, removed, and nobody knows where it is.
So that is the other reason to buy this book. You will find out about that. I have cracked that 35-year mystery. I know what happened. It's described in the book. I put a spoiler alert that said, look, if you don't want this mystery solved, stop reading here, go to the next page. And if you want to read on, you will find out what happened in that scene. So those are two of my big discoveries. There's a lot of them in this Wild at Heart book. I actually think this is my best oral history I've done. The story, you've not heard any of these stories.
The oral history is my personal favorite format. Like that's really what I want when I'm looking for a book about any kind of media that I love. I've talked very highly about your Fire Walk With Me book that I read, and this sounds like it's in the same vein. So you've talked to a lot of people.
It is the same where I do a thing on the soundtrack. I compare 3 scripts. I got a hold of a script that no one in the world knows about. The internet has never heard it before. And I got to go through that. It's Lynch's very first draft of Wild at Heart, and the changes are big. And so that's in the book. I mean, there's some big secrets in this. So I should be pushing that for pushing the book. But right now I'm just trying to tell people, like, look, if you love Wild at Heart, and you want a collector's edition, now there's under 400 people who are going to get one. And then I don't care if you get one or not. I'll sell these books. They're going to sell. But
we'll have the link in the show notes so people can jump on that. Yeah, you were talking about, I talked to you, I think we were still doing season 1. We had just started, and you were maybe just starting this project, or it was a thing because you had mentioned, we talked very briefly about it, but you've talked to so many people. So of all the people you talked to in this new book, is it all new interviews that you're doing? Are you like going through past archives and like piecing together the entire story of Wild at Heart, or was it everything from, that moment until now?
It's all new, barring 2 people that Brian Cursor gave me. So he gave me one quote from Frances Bay, who's no longer with us, and Grace Zabriskie, who is not up to doing interviews anymore. Mm-hmm. So there are 2 quotes that Brian wanted to have in the book, which was really great. So you got, those 2. But on that, it's all new. And most of these people have never given an interview. So.
Wow. It sounds fascinating, as does the Double R Dream, which, to return to that, obviously, if you're in the area and you're near Tweeds, of course you should go. You should get yourself tickets. I think you're in a double feature with a doc about the history of
Correct.
The diner or something like that. If people can't make it, how will they eventually get to see it? Is it something that you have plans for now, or is that too early?
I do. So the next thing is you can go to Chicago the week of September 18th through the 22nd. Daniel Knox is doing one of his David Lynch things that I always get to be his Andy Richter for, and we're going to show it there, and it's going to show up at a couple other places, and then I'm hoping for it to play at the Real Twin Peaks event next year, and then I'll put it up for streaming. I want to try to get it at a couple Lynch things throughout this year. Otherwise, it'll go out to stream February 24th, 2027.
Okay. So you have your homework. If you save those miles, get to one of those locations, and then while you're on the airplane, you'd be reading the book. Go pre-order yourself Wild at Heart. What's the actual title? Is it
The Road to David Lynch's Wild at Heart?
Okay, The Road to David Lynch's Wild at Heart. As I said, you'll find links to both the event and the book pre-order in the show notes. Scott, thank you so much. I'm glad you got to stop by, tell us about your film. I myself look forward to seeing it and the new book.
Hey, thank you for squeezing me in. And I just want to tell people, Brent Simon's book is incredible. I loved it. Stories, again, you've not heard. This is not a retread, so I enjoy your time with Brent.
Today on Meanwhile, I am very honored and happy to get a chance to talk to author Brent Simon, who has written for a variety of publications, including Variety, the AV Club, and he's recently authored a book, The Dreamer's Path, Twin Peaks, and David Lynch, the actor. Mr. Brent Simon, welcome to Meanwhile. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for your time, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Sure. I'm curious to know where you grew up. Where does a Brent Simon spring to life and find himself?
North Carolina. So, and the interesting thing as a quick aside is I grew up in the center part of the state, Greensboro, but my grandparents were from Wilmington. So, which is of course famously where, Blue Velvet shot.
At the sound of the falling tree, it's 9:30.
So I was too young to see Blue Velvet when it came out theatrically, but I absolutely remember the old Carol Co Studios and, all those, a lot of those filming sites even were places that I were familiar with. So yeah, a funny attachment there.
When did you first get exposed to David Lynch and his work? How old were you? And then it must have been wild to then watch Blue Velvet and be like, I know that place. I know that place.
Yeah. Very much, I think my origin story, if you will, is very similar to yours, right? That Twin Peaks, I probably saw the commercials for it leading up to the April 1990 premiere and was kind of struck. I was like, oh, it's like a murder mystery, seems a little offbeat. And so I watched it. And I knew of Lynch as a filmmaker, but I had not, to my recollection, had not seen any of his films. Certainly hadn't seen Blue Velvet. I don't think I'd seen Dune. In fact, I know I hadn't seen Dune. So I just knew that he was a film director who was coming to TV, watched it, my head exploded, my brain came out of my ears, and I was instantly hooked. And then I was like down the rabbit hole because I wanted to not just absorb every atom of Twin Peaks, but also everybody who was involved with it, all the actors, the writers. I became interested in their past work. So I was just like a Hoover vacuum, just, vacuuming up everything. But it was that intensity of feeling that was attached to Twin Peaks because I think like you, I saw it at a time, I was a teenager, a young teenager, and it seemed to hold these truths about the world that a lot of adults didn't want to admit to or talk about. And I was absorbed in my own depth of feeling and the fact that something could be both funny and then terrifying, 5 seconds apart. And I was like, wow, already having a little interest in writing. I was like, wow, I want to write about that and attempt to unpack it a little maybe more sophisticated than the teenage vernacular of that's awesome or that sucked.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like the way he straddles that line, I I don't think I had ever seen anything like that before. And that's funny because it comes up every interview that I do. People are immediately drawn to the funny nature, the comedy, the absurdity, and the horror. It's such an intricate thing that if you push too hard in one direction or another, it becomes something else. But somehow he manages to completely keep that in balance. It's fascinating. So when you discover Twin Peaks, right, your brain's coming out your ears, you're starting to absorb all the stuff. Did you watch Dune at that time?
It was probably a little bit later. It was probably between, in that sort of interregnum period between Twin Peaks going off the air and this tantalizing possibility of a film existing, and then the film actually coming out, right? When we were held in suspense, like, really, is that going to be the end of this? It was probably between season 2 and Fire Walk with Me that I first saw Dune.
I bring up Dune specifically because I was aware of you before I was aware of you. Because if I'm not mistaken, you interviewed Lynch when he talked about maybe returning to Dune. That blew my mind because I love Dune. And for people that may not be aware, anytime it came up, you would only hear that it was a sadness. It was this great sadness. If you got a little bit of positivity, it was because he learned he never wanted to do that, how important Final Cut was, that not everyone's Mel Brooks. Like, you have to, I'm just going to do things my way. You did an interview with the AV Club where he says, and he seemed very serious, that he's considering re-editing or returning to Dune. Like, did that knock your socks off in the same way that it knocked my socks off? Because that went around and I saw that thing and I had so much hope. It didn't happen. But can you tell me about that?
That was, it was totally a record scratch moment. And it's an object lesson for other journalists too, of like, don't get married to your own list of questions and not listen to what the person is actually saying. Because I'd had the good fortune to interview him a number of times, and I was smart enough probably not to ask about Dune, but it may have come up before in conversation. And as you said, he's always the reflection upon it was the lesson learned, right? And is a sadness, but he had learned to always have Final Cut. And we were talking about Inland Empire.
It was the upscaling, right? I think you're talking about the upscaling, and he adds Dune.
He brought Dune up by himself because I was interested in, like, well, did you think about going back to re-edit Inland Empire? He brought Dune up, and, there was this very kind of like rhapsodic look on his face. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And so I asked him about that because specifically when we had talked before, I said, look, I know that in other interviews and when we have talked, you have been very dismissive about that possibility. And he kind of, he hemmed and hawed or backed off a little bit by saying, he and I quote that in the book, that he wishes, that there was a silk purse, but he knows that it's a sow's ear. But he didn't close the door. And that was amazing to me. In fact, that he opened it a little bit, actually.
He literally opens it, and it's so charming to your reaction to it because it comes off very genuine. You could almost imagine coffee being spit out of your mouth when you're like, "What did you say? Wait a minute, what?"
Right.
And wow, that your relationship or professional relationship, your banter back and forth. You mentioned having interviewed him a number of times. He seems very more comfortable with you than some of the other interviews and stuff that I read. When you're interviewing someone like him, who clearly you're a fan of, is it hard to completely separate, the fan part of you from the journalist at that point?
I give him a lot of credit because there's plenty of celebrities, big stars, and I've had the good fortune to interview many of them, most of them. And they're stars for a reason because they can put you at ease, right? Like that they are playing a part as they sit across from you doing an interview to talk about their latest work or their career or whatever it is. But with David, it was that I think he was really genuine. And again, I had the good fortune. I had stumbled into this job much too early, but I was editor-in-chief of a free weekly paper in Los Angeles. And this is at the time when it was before Mulholland Drive. So the existence of these missing scenes from Fire Walk with Me was known about, but he was also working on a website and stuff like that. And so I just pitched him on a cover story. I said, look, I'm a big fan. I'd love to talk to you. And they were like, yeah, come on up to the house and hang out. And I was like, what? But I had the good fortune to have read and gone to school on like all the other interviews that were maybe less successful, right? Because it's people trying to solve his work. And so right out of the gate, one of the first things, not the first, but one of the first things I said to him was like, look, I know that you're going to want to talk about the baby from Eraserhead and give away right. that secret, but I don't want to know that. I know that you are very interested in talking about that today, but please, let's leave it a secret. And he laughed and said, good deal, Brent. And and so then we were kind of off and running, and that established like a little bit of rapport that I think, sort of lasted, I guess.
Hello, my name is David Lynch, and I'm here to talk to you about the Cannes Diary. The Cannes Diary is a daily show, every day on davidlynch.com. And for those of you who can't go to Cannes this year, this show should give you a feeling that you're there.
What's so great about that period, it's like you locked into his special interest at the time, because you mentioned it's like davidlynch.com is being formed. So that's what he's hyper aware of. And then you're coming in wanting to talk about that. Like, that's like, it feels like if he's really interested in the thing, he's really interested in the thing and welcomes that kind of attention. And if it's something he's not thinking about at the time, it's like, why are we talking about this? Right. I have this new dream over here. So when did you start? Because you did you did critical stuff too, like where you're doing movie reviews and things like that, as well as features and interviews. Yes. When did you start getting into that work?
Oh, I was going to say straight out of college, but even in college, I went to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, wrote for the college paper, movie reviews, music reviews. That was a great way as a college student to, you discover you can get free movie tickets and free CDs. What? But then also getting to write about it and kind of hone my critical chops was fantastic. And I absolutely review film, and sometimes the kind of portfolio swings a little more in one direction than the other, from reviews to features. But I've always viewed those as just kind of two different hats. Because I'm interested in evaluating films, and writing critically about them, but I love also talking to the people that make them.
What makes then a good review? Not meaning a positive review, but like what are the things you look for, either from your own work or in others, that constitutes a good? Because it seems like that's a skill that's waning. With you don't get as much, or I'm not seeing or exposed to as much of like a good critical look at something.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I think a lot of people have lost the interest or ability maybe to kind of absorb critical analysis. Can't read the news critically, certainly. But in films, for me, it was always, okay, some grounding in film scholarship, film history, the technique that's being applied. And then also, I think a really good review is one where you read it and the person who's written it either liked or didn't like this film, but you were able to form your own opinion about whether you would like it, right? Maybe they hated it, but you read the review and you're like, okay, this is a negative review, but I know that I still want to see this movie, or vice versa.
Yeah.
That's always kind of like a good metric for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's such an interesting thing, because art is so subjective, no matter how you're looking at it. And ultimately, you find people that are writing reviews that have the same taste as you. Like, there's certain movie reviewers, like Mark Kermode, or like if he's reviewing something, he likes it, there's a good chance I'm going to like it, because we seem to have similar tastes on some of these things.
I know you hate saying what things mean in your films, but am I right in thinking that that's at least in the right area? No.
But to your point, a good writer is going to highlight these things, not just, I really like this, or this is really great, or whatever. Like, it's like a balance of the nuts and bolts of the thing, but also how it connects to you as a person. So we get some of your like personality of the thing that like Brent Simon likes, and like coming up with something that doesn't read just like overly flattering or what have you.
Yeah, like press notes, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that. I mean, it seems like there's a lot of that, and it's just that's the direction. Because if you're a fan who's doing critical stuff, of course you're getting, like you mentioned, you're getting free CDs or you're getting free movie tickets, and there's that temptation, and you don't want to write a bad review because then you're not going to get the free stuff anymore, and you might not get invited. And because celebrities and creators like that, they're alluring, so you want them to like you. You don't want to write a bad thing. So I have such respect for people that can operate so objectively to their own taste, it's in that sense of objective, and not be tempted and kind of put out something they're proud of, and
Yeah.
So you're also writing books. I got to talk about this book. I got to talk about this book. Anybody can write a David Lynch book. I think there's books about his art. There's books about his life.
There's a lot of them. Yeah.
There's 1,000 interpretations of his work. These are all great. I'm not trying to talk negatively about anybody's book. But you're the only book, I think, that I'm aware of, at least, that concentrated on his work as an actor. Like, what made you pick that? Because it's fascinating. And I also don't want to, for people that haven't read it, by the end of this, you're going to sell a lot of books, because I'm going to tell people how amazing this thing is. It's not just that. There's so much more to that. You're going to learn so much more about Lynch's work. But just sticking with the acting part, what was the idea that fired in you that you were like, I got to do this?
I mean, the seed, like so many things, goes back to Twin Peaks. And that's why Twin Peaks is in the title, because I think certainly Gordon Cole was David Lynch's most famous or known performance. But it was when I was doing a rewatch, actually, of season 3. It wasn't when I first came out in 2017, but I was rewatching it, and I was really struck by not a novel thought, but the way, again, that season dealt with and incorporated the passage of time into the fabric of its narrative, and then particularly took this character of Gordon Cole and made him something different than we had known and seen previously. I would argue there is a differentiation or growth or fleshing out of Gordon Cole in Fire Walk With Me from the Gordon Cole that we saw in season 2. But wow, he's very different in season 3, and in a lot of ways he's helping to drive the narrative, and I was struck by that and wanted to explore that, because to me, and one of the things I must say I've really enjoyed Meanwhile. I've enjoyed your podcast.
Oh, thank you.
But one of the reasons is that you take theory and you wrap it not in certitude, but you sort of instead use the words that Gordon Cole himself might appreciate, which is, now this is really something to think about.
Damn! I hadn't remembered that. Now this is really something interesting to think about.
And you present it that way, which is, I think, the much more enjoyable way to try to wrap one's arms around the many, many mysteries of Twin Peaks, right? So I knew this isn't a skeleton key, like that it's going to solve it and everything. But it did seem very notable that you had David Lynch returning to this series, his greatest commercial success, and then also a series that, in its conclusion, held some pain, kind of snuffed too soon, right? And the way that he stepped further into it seemed very meaningful. And obviously there's dozens or hundreds of examples of all of the other things in his work, previous work in life, that made its way into the fabric of the show as well. But when I thought about that, I was like, well, that's one way to write about Twin Peaks season 3. But that also reminded me of one of those first movies that I went back and saw when I was mainlining all things Twin Peaks in the early 90s, and that was Zelly and Me, which was the movie that he did with Isabella Rossellini, written and directed by Tina Rathborn, who many folks will know as an episodic director of Twin Peaks. And that was in 1988. That came out before Twin Peaks, and I think is a very sweet film, ahead of its time in certain ways. and sort of shackled by some choices in others. And I was like, oh man, this is really interesting. And all of the other Lynch performances kind of came flooding in. And then what really cemented it was like, I knew immediately, just like that, oh, this is a way to try to wrap my arms around the enormity and depth of what the art life meant to him in a way that's serious, but also really funny and fun. And so but the idea was definitely in Twin Peaks season 3, and then just all the other stuff. That was like the magnet that pulled everything else to it.
Yeah. It's like a mirror of discovering Twin Peaks within yourself and then connecting to all those different Lynch films in both directions in the same way that his performance now ripples out. You mentioned the Zelly in Me. I like that movie a lot. And hearing you talk to her, Tina Rathborn, about that film, it was sad. I mean, I don't think she thinks of it as highly as it is. And you even talk about, there's some talk, I think, about Lynch watching it, and I couldn't really get a good impression if he was happy with his performance or not. But it's such an overlooked film, and I think her work is great. And that's her only film, as far as I know, right? She did like something for TV, and that was it.
She'd done like a Playhouse, kind of mini feature that was like a little over an hour. But yeah, that was her one big feature film shot at a time when Columbia was really rolling the dice and gambling on, sort of unknown filmmakers. And you're right. I think it's understandably she's too close to it, right? She's lost and she sees only the compromises, or in her mind, the failures. And that, I mean, the interview and the conversation I had with her, it was, I was like trying to impress upon her. No, like I saw this originally as a teenage guy and was still struck and moved by it. And, and me trying to convince her of all the ways that it held up, because I think it does.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's sometimes just hard for people when they're looking at their own work. I've heard her say that about, like, she talks, I don't know if you talked about it in your book, like her second episode, which is Leland's funeral in Twin Peaks. She's also not, it's the second season. That's the part of the season a lot of people don't like. But she was also very hard on herself for that. And it's just like, I just get the impression that maybe that's how she is. And it's just, she's overly critical of some of her work. But I think it's a beautiful movie, and it portrays pain in a really interesting way for a child, and abuse that isn't necessarily the type of abuse that you always think about. And I think his performance in it is fantastic. He's only in a couple of scenes, but when he's there, especially that, the diner scene when they're talking.
Is this your father's?
Joan, I'm not who you think I am.
I know. You don't have to explain to me anything. You're a very nice man, and I'm a very practical woman. Have you seen my sneakers?
I like those shoes. Please stay.
I'm too afraid of that woman.
Yeah, but what about Phoebe?
Phoebe. Phoebe's the closest thing I'll ever have to a child of my own.
What about...
What?
Stay for me.
It's just very understated, and just like, I really enjoy it. I think he's a good performer.
He is. I mean, it's a very credible performance. I think, yes, the book talks about his reaction to the screening it, because it was Tina's memory that she and Isabella Rossellini was not there for this screening, but Tina's recollection is they screened it on the Sony lot, and he had a very negative reaction to it, and he kind of stormed out. And that didn't affect their friendship. She's quick to point that out. But I think it could be because of there's the degree of vulnerability that he projects is maybe something that he was not really ready to see, or he was a little bit struck uncomfortable by. And then I think that it is, there is a little bit of sweetness to the film that he didn't anticipate maybe as well.
Yeah. But you mentioned watching season 3 again. or The Return again, I was blown away because again, this is not, you don't just get these wonderful things about Lynch acting. You get like little tidbits and trivia things that you probably wouldn't have figured out. Like there's a yellow legal pad in the film, the documentary The Art Life, that has the scene from the dream scene with Monica Bellucci in Paris.
And last night, I had another Monica Bellucci dream.
That's in one of the first, that's in like in chapter 2 or 3, I write about that because you realize quite quickly like how you can really get lost in a rabbit hole. So I wanted to sort of like acknowledge that to the reader, right? Like we're going to have some fun and like there are things that are definitely performances because he's playing Gordon Cole or he's voicing the bartender on the Cleveland show or this or that. And then there's other things where you're like, well, is this really a performance? And so that was... that was something that I recognized, I saw, and I recognized, some galaxy brain on the internet is going to like 4D chess this and say, aha, like this was Lynch's performance art and he knew this film would release before the series and this and that. So yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was very impressive. And you do a really good job of not getting too lost into the weeds. You're going to go into the weeds and you're going to find an ear on the ground. And it's amazing. So you get stuff, but it would be so easy to get lost down, like you're saying, some of these rabbit holes where you're getting into some of these details. But you always seem to pull it back in a really entertaining way. Like the book is just fantastic. You speak to a ton of people, including like Michael Onkeen.
Yes.
That you talk to him about Twin Peaks. You talk to him about The Return, and also I think you talked to him about the Lynch weather reports as well. But are these all like culled from multiple interviews over time, or did you talk to everyone specifically knowing, hey, I want to do this book about Lynch as an actor, and then go down your Rolodex?
I'm trying to recall now, and I do think all the interviews are specifically for this book, except for, obviously, I quote from some previous interviews with David Lynch, because I had the good fortune to interview him 9 times over 20 plus years. And so there are relevant portions of those that are quoted. But yes, Michael Onkeen and everyone else, it was, a big spreadsheet of me chasing a bunch of people and listing all the times I contacted them and tracing them down and explaining, especially sometimes when I was chasing some people that didn't end up in the book and, trying to explain to either them or publicists that I was not wanting to talk about the big and obvious project or intersection with David Lynch in their life, but I was wanting to talk about this small curio. Yeah.
Did that make it easier to get those kind of interviews when they realized, oh, he's actually talking about something that probably is very interesting to them because they don't get asked about it a lot, or they can talk about this one performance? Did you find that easier?
It was a little bit of both in that the time period that the writing of the book took place over spanned, I did the first interview with Tina Rathborn actually in 2023, but a lot of it was done in 2024, and I was very intentional about wanting to build up a massive amount of interview material before talking to David Lynch. And so I mentioned this in the book that it was fall of 2024, and I went back out to his assistant, and he had agreed to talk about performance, and I was delighted. And so we were out for scheduling, and we were going to connect after the Sundance Film Festival in 2025 when tragically he passed away. And then I was stuck in this awkward position of not wanting to appear to be a jerk and a vulture. And there were a lot of interviews that were done. There were a separate category of people who'd been contacted but not yet interviewed. And then there were other people that I hadn't even contacted yet. And so I kind of had to rethink things a little bit and at least put a pause on reaching out to people because I was sensitive to that. And so to your question, it sort of flipped some no's to yeses, because there were some people who, after he passed, then maybe they felt like as part of their grieving process, they said, hey, now I want to share some of these anecdotes and stories, or I want to have a chance to talk to someone and reflect back on this thing that that is a little less known, perhaps.
Right.
And then unfortunately, there were some people who had committed who obviously, their
Right.
plans
It's too
changed.
hard for them at that
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a little bit of both.
Did you ever consider stopping it, like, after that moment? I mean, you put so much, you're talking about 2023, right? Roughly around.
Yeah.
Years of work building up to this interview with Lynch, one of many, but it's going to be about your book. Then this horrible tragedy happens. And you said that you don't want to appear like a vulture because there's probably a bunch of people just pushing out Lynch books just to capitalize on the loss of him. Did it ever enter your mind, like, maybe I'm going to do something else or put it on hiatus for a while?
No. I knew that I had still such a passion for it. And to be honest, it was a great escape for me, like mentally, right? I mean, the real world, and this is one of the maybe subtextual lessons of the book, is that you can hold a lot of darkness in the world at bay through finding an abundance of sincere joy in the quotidian, right? Just losing yourself in something that you're passionate about. And so the writing and the research and all that stuff was still a joy for me. A lot of hard work, but I was like, wow, there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. So it was a matter of like pressing pause, and at least with some of that outreach, but I knew that I was going to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. And it comes across as it's really a beautiful tribute to his work. It's the same reason, if you listen to the podcast, that's why I started the podcast. So I totally get that. Hello, friends, and welcome to The Midpoint. I hope you're enjoying this double. It's a double whammy. It's a double interview. You gotta go check out that Brent Simon book and go check out Scott Ryan's film. And while you're checking people out, check out the best of the bunch. Of course, I'm talking about the Black Lodge supporters that have supported us for so long at this point. We've got Chuck Suffel and Gregory Flanagan, my sister Dawn Adamo, Banjo Track, Eric Knopp, Charlie Tapper, Ivan, Jake Jagello, Matthew Fuller, Raga Raven, David Melito, Daryl Dyson, Dana Gould, Art Hill, Jeff, Henrik E., Concluding Remarks, Brian Johnson, Evan Fitz, Hazel Haywood, William Schaefer, Jordan Carver, Matt W., Nick Webb, Kaylin Best Lawrence, He Who Is Clem Fandango, a.k.a. Luke P., Eva, Neil McKenzie, Ben Chisholm, David Titterington, Ethan Berry, May Surkoff, Wordy Ginters, Chris H., Patrick Weiss, Skeksis, Julian Zoller, Matthew Walker, Dustin Weaver, Fifi Ramone, Dave, and Andy Levy. Oh my gosh, that's taken me some time. I'm going to go have a fresca. They still make those? Anyway, let's get back to the interview. The thing with Michael Onkine that I had brought up, like, you, in your book, I did not know why he wasn't in season 3, The Return. You do find out why he was in, and it made me love him even more learning that. I'll leave that, unless you want to talk about it, I would leave that for the book for someone to find it. I don't know if that's well-known information, but like I was always wanted to know, and you get that out of the book, and it's like, it just makes me think so much more high of him than I already did.
Yeah, that was a little, I was very moved that he shared that. I think there had been a little bit of rumor about that, but there was certainly nothing that confirmed it. And some of that rumor, in fact, was wrong or just incorrect. And so, that's one of those things. And there's a couple in the book that are Twin Peaks revelations, right? Even though, yes, the book is a lot about Twin Peaks, but it's also about all this other stuff. And yet, talking to folks, there were some incredible revelations specifically as well.
You talk to like Harley Payton. You spend a number of pages on like the kissing scene, like Lynch writing in the scene where he's kissing Shelley.
I'm about ready to leave Twin Peaks, and I don't know when I'm going to return. But I want you to know that meeting you has been more than a privilege. It's touched my heart.
And I know that if I don't kiss you now, I'm gonna regret it the rest of my days.
Hey! What the hell's going on?
You are witnessing a front three-quarter view of two adults sharing a tender moment.
Acts like he's never seen a kiss before.
Gordon?
Take another look, Sonny. It's going to happen again.
And Harley's not holding back with some of his thoughts. And that's like a thing, you know, if you've listened to an interview with Harley Peyton, they had their tension between the two of them. And you can feel that rising right off the page several times that you talk to Harley Peyton. But I'm curious to know what other people thought. It's like you got Bob Engels and he loves it. And then Harley Peyton who's like, this is terrible. And that I think matches completely the relationship with Lynch and the two of them. But did you get a sense from other people what they thought of it? Because I've heard Machen talk about that scene very positively.
Yes.
Did you talk to anyone else about it or just Harley?
I think I talked to some other folks about it, and including the episodic director, Jonathan Sanger. And I think a lot of people did love it, but one of the real joys of that kind of writing that passage in the book was I knew that was going to be something that would be really fun to unpack because Harley Peyton is a guy who doesn't hold back, and he's very candid about like loving or having this incredible love and respect for David Lynch as an artistic genius, and also the fact that they just butted heads, right? I mean,
he got yelled at for like 8 minutes or something on the phone or something
like
that.
Yeah, and he's holding on to his personal computer after the end of the show just because he knows that's making David Lynch furious. He talks about that. But I was fascinated in current times by the fact that for a younger generation of Twin Peaks fans, if you go on Reddit or any message boards and whatnot, and you find younger fans of the show, as I mentioned in the book, the reactions to that scene specifically are cringe, gross, inappropriate, right? That for a younger audience, they see or they know of the off-screen power imbalance. They see that reflected in that scene, and they find it off-putting, or they'll say, I skip it or whatever. And, I was really fortunate in talking to Jonathan Sanger. He had the original script pages, his working script for shooting that episode. And so it was fascinating to go through and see the written word and compare that with the broadcast word and get a sense of how that dialogue was changed. And what I think that reflects is David Lynch exerting a control over character, not necessarily as a showrunner and, like I'm going to devise this scene where I kiss this beautiful young actress. Because by all accounts, Machen loved it, I think, sincerely. That's there's the documentary featurette.
Yeah, the Slice of Lynch. Yeah, they talk about it.
And I got to kiss you, Madgen.
I know. I feel honored.
I feel, are you kidding me? One of the highlights of my life. And I remember thinking, how sick is this? Writing that into it so I could kiss Madgen.
Slice of Lynch, she appears and she says positive things, and I think that's sincere. But I think it reflects an ownership of character, because the difference in written word and what we see broadcast is there's a lot more swagger in the character of Gordon Cole when it is you're witnessing a front three-quarter view of two adults sharing a tender moment. Take another look, Sonny, it's going to happen again. That's not how it was originally scripted. So it was a lot of fun to examine those differences.
Another thing that jumps out, and because you're covering Lynch, and often Lynch is adding voices or appearing or doing something in his own work, it's such a, the dreamer's path of watching a man move from project to project, creative to creative, and seeing how those inspire other things. And for me, like the inflection point of that PS2 commercial.
Welcome to the third place.
PlayStation 2! The third place!
And how you can see from there when I think he's first using the PD-150 making that commercial, right? Mm-hmm. And how that you can draw a direct line to Inland Empire. So if people, I think we covered this on the Patreon. So if you're not familiar, it was called The Third Place. It was a PS2 commercial that he shot with Jason S. playing the guy in the suit, which I didn't know who directed that wonderful, the man with the gray elevated hair. But so Lynch shoots this. They do it digitally. You can see that he's falling in love with like, oh, I can shoot this thing on this autofocus and it's so easy to move around and I could do all that stuff. But there was some talk about him being upset with the commercial because it was in black and white.
Right.
And not in color. And then there was something about 2 versions. So can you watch both versions, the color version and the black and white version? They only aired the black and white version, right?
They only, I spoke with Guy Beatty, who was the creative director for that campaign, and he chalks it up to a miscommunication, right? That he had gone back to London, where he was based, and when David was finishing cutting, they sent the deliverables, and he showed it to the Sony executive,
right,
in its black and white form, and kind of sold it as, you have this, the director of Eraserhead and Elephant Man shot in black and white, and here it is in black and white. And that, because that was originally Guy's personal favorite, but David Lynch always intended for it to be in color. And to your question, I believe you can, knock on wood, because they pop up on YouTube every once in a while, and sometimes they'll get snatched down for copyright claims or whatever. But both versions, I think, are out there if you search. So you can see the black and white that was what was shown in theaters. But the color really does give you a more robust sense of his vision for all that stuff they shot.
Did you talk to a lot of the crew that made that?
I talked to several folks. The cameraman and Guy especially, who had some incredible stories to share. Definitely. And it was a blast. It's a 2-day shoot in Hollywood, and David originally, when he was pitched this idea of a third place, because the campaign was, neither wake nor sleep. It's a third place. It's this subliminal space.
I always found that campaign name confusing, only because, like, at the time Sony's putting out the PS2. There's still a Nintendo system. I don't know if there's no Xbox yet, but it's almost like we're in third place or something. Now, I understand what you're saying, but I just read like, it's ironic. We're in third place under Nintendo and Sega, I guess, at that point or whatever.
And I think it was weird too, because it was PS2 third place. And so sometimes they were using the numeral 2 and it was a whole thing. But yeah, it was funny because I think part of the original pitch was, Guy had another idea, and David wanted to he was intrigued enough and then wanted to do the commercial, but he sort of wanted, it was originally pitched as a road movie, and then of course David Lynch just wanted to film it all at his home studio. and the parameters of it expanded beyond what was reasonable, with pyrotechnics and everything else to accomplish there. So they found a space in downtown LA. Where they had a 2-day shoot. Yeah.
You can watch it on YouTube, but I also recommend, there's like a behind the scenes making of that it just looks like so much fun.
Yes.
That they're having when they're doing that. But it's like so neat to see, like, okay, here this is why he's going to become focused on digital video. And here now is why he's going to start to do it goes right into the website.
It goes right into all that website stuff.
It's all connected to like whatever he's into at the time, and then he gets kind of obsessed with it for a period of time, and then he moves on to something else. But the website stuff, were you a member of the website?
I was. I was indeed.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I think it's because at the time I was broke all the time and I didn't do it. But I remember visiting the website, but seeing the stuff that you talk about in the book with like the phone booths.
Yes.
And the codes that you can get if you have the short film thing and then you get the code in.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. What was it like being a member of that site during its heyday?
It was fantastic because it existed at a time when it was maybe between Web 1.0 and Web 2.0.
It was the stupid money phase as well, or the end of it. Yeah.
It was a stupid money phase. Yeah. And that helped birth Dumbland.
Yeah.
Hilariously enough. But it was, there was maybe it's difficult for people, especially a younger generation now, to believe or grasp, but the idea of direct payment to artists for their work was not beyond the realm of the possible. It seemed like that was going to be a business model that would really work. And so it would allow for truly independent artists to thrive. And so his website never had any advertising, corporate sponsorship. So it was a pay model, membership model, $9.97 a month, which was the figure he came up with.
Yeah.
And it was, he spent a lot of time and put a lot of thought into the design, the aesthetics of the website. And then it was just a real treat because he was, I don't want to give the impression that he was there like every day around the clock, but he was a very active participant on the message boards. So you would go into, there were 2 message boards, and there were 2. Why were there 2? Were they different? No, there were just 2 message boards, but they were kind of the same thing. At least that's my recollection of it.
Yeah.
And he would, sometimes be on there, right? Just kind of answering questions that fans would be posing or whatever.
Yeah, they do those member fan letters. He would read letters from fans and stuff. It's great.
RHS, my buddy who's, after one of my arms, wonders if I take coffee breaks from my cappuccinos. And I have gone through periods when I've just had coffee with milk. Then I have gone through periods where I just have espresso. And now I'm back on cappuccinos solamente. So these days I'm not taking any breaks from the cappuccinos.
Yeah, I mean, the material was truly, one of a kind, as you might expect. And then just the aesthetics of the site, and obviously he sold Eraserhead and his short films, and there were these wonderful bespoke collections that came, and in fact, I should have brought some with me. I have them.
Oh, nice.
I bought them at the time, and they arrived, in these very nicely designed packages and everything like that. So there's a lot of time and care and thought put into everything.
So much work, too. I think you detail it in the book where it's their servers that they have set up. He didn't really want to involve any third parties unless they absolutely had to. So they're literally running the servers that are running this website. It was way ahead of its time.
Yes.
It's really impressive stuff.
Yeah.
All the stuff that is so neat too about those, the small things that he did that I was not aware of. So there was the Way of Samodelkin. Am I pronouncing that right?
Oh, The Way of Samodelkin. Yes. The Moscow art scene, or the Make-A-Wish, or it's like a Make-A-Film Foundation. Yes.
Which is something I was not familiar with. I don't know if our listeners are familiar with it, but basically it's like a Make-A-Wish charity in which the top stars, top directors are in movies with people as part of their wish. And I loved that section to hear about how he was in a film with Johnny Depp. Laura Dern's in it as well. Yep. Johnny Depp won't leave, right? And then David Lynch you get 5 minutes and he's in and out, like no business. But it's a very touching scene the way he talks to everyone. It's great. Were you familiar with that? I had no idea this thing existed, but apparently there's tons of these films.
I was familiar with the Black Gondola, the Make-A-Film Foundation short that you referenced. And because there was a cut of that I'd seen on the internet, and it just has, I won't spoil it for people necessarily, but if you know, which is, I'd like to cook for you lasagna, right? It has, he puts a very unique and in some ways sinister spin on a certain line reading that was not intended in that way.
How long has it been since you've had a home-cooked meal?
Sir, can't you see what's happening here?
How long?
And so I spoke with the director of that day and that scene, Catherine Hardwick. But you're right, it's a fantastic charity where everyone donates their time and all these resources to bring to life a film for a really a terminally ill child. So I knew about that one. The Russian film that you mentioned, I did not know about. That was a real discovery for me. And that's part of this chapter that I call David Lynch World Tour, which he, in 2008 and 2009, he took 2 trips abroad. He went to South America in 2008, so he ended up in 2 Brazilian short films, as one does.
Yeah, that's what happens. Happens to me. Happened to me this morning.
This is the picture we took last night, before he disappeared.
What do you mean disappeared? You mean up in flames like poof? Or was he abducted?
He had red herring for dinner.
There's no such thing as red herring.
And in 2009, he had gone to Russia. There was a Russian translation of one of his books, and there was also an art exhibit that was opening in Moscow. And he went and was asked to be in this film, and he said yes, when he had no reason to.
Remember the film.
And so The Way of Sam Adelka, and it was, me tracking down the credited director and the actor who appeared opposite him and all this kind of stuff. And that was some of the most difficult, just in terms of like the amount of time. But it was fantastic to get in touch with those people and hear their stories about those works.
And there's some drama within that group about who is in charge, like who's the director. I thought this was a collective and kind of stuff. But I'm so impressed with these creators, like we talked about this Russian art project or the Make-A-Wish, where you have them for like 3 minutes and you're creating a film around that. Like they have it's like a Q&A or something of Lynch talking that then becomes part of, because they have very little material, but they're able to make something wonderful out of it. And I should say Adele Jones who played Lieutenant Knox from The Return, is in the what would you say the name of it was? The
Black Gondola.
The Black yes, yeah.
Yeah, she served as the casting director for that as well.
Right. Yeah, that's great stuff. And speaking of Johnny Depp, I did not know that he was almost going to be in Lost Highway. I'm assuming that was the Balthazar Getty role would have been his.
Yeah. That was, it was out to him.
It makes sense, though, because like at that period of time, he had done like Crybaby, I think, like he's working with John Waters, Jim Jarmusch, Dead Man. Like it would make sense that he would also want to be in a Lynch movie. Do you know why that didn't work out?
I think it was less the, old standard of scheduling and more just that it was like creatively, it didn't make sense. Yeah.
No, well, I'm happy we have Balthazar Getty, but
yes,
that's something I'd never had heard before. And it was like, that's what I mean. You got to get this book. And I have a code for you. Not for you. You wrote it. You already own it. You don't get a code. FWWM315. You get 10% off if you go to Tuckard's Press. Is that right?
Tuckard DS Press.
Yes, Tuckard's D Press. I'm going to put the link in there. You don't have to watch me stumble, or go to bluerosemag.com and put the code and you'll be fine. But yeah, we got to get some of these books out there because it was great. It was like, it just blew through this thing. And I'm telling you, like, I obviously have this podcast. You're listening to me. I know a lot. I'm watching Lynch stuff all the time. I'm reading. I learned so many wonderful little things in here. Even, like, it's more than just, like, acting, too. Like, there's these beautiful little moments that you talk about. And I'm thinking specifically about the cigarette that David Lynch as Gordon Cole and Laura Dern as Diane and Krista Bell share in that thing. And how that's just something they're doing. They're just hanging out and smoking cigarettes. And there's the inner stuff going on where Krista Bell doesn't know. I mean, she knows David Lynch. She doesn't know Laura Dern for as long. So they have, and anytime you're hanging out with someone that has that past and you're kind of on the outside and Lynch is bringing her into the conversation and he recognizes this moment and then shoots it. Yep. And just taking the time to write about that and to share a moment like that, it adds so much more to a rewatch now when I think about it, because there's so much of Lynch, and you talked about it a little bit in the beginning, how Gordon Cole changes as we watch The Return from the original Twin Peaks. And a lot of it is Lynch coming through. Mm-hmm. The wine drinking, the stuff about like, and you've heard me talk about like the fact that Twin Peaks is a tulpa and we're getting near the edge of the story and all that wonderful stuff. But a moment like that is like this brilliant guy recognizing a moment that's happening in real life and then applying it to a creative thing that makes sense in the context of the story is such like those decisions that he makes. And that was one of my favorite parts of the book. Story didn't know, but I think it's like just a beautiful moment. And I'm glad you captured that. I don't really have a question other than it was really good. How did Krista Bell told you that story, right?
She did. Yeah. Krista Bell shared that. And that was, it was a real, that's an example of, one of those things that was a real thrill to stumble upon, quite frankly, because she was someone I reached out to many, many times over a long period of time. And she was finally or eventually at a place where, very thankfully, she was kind enough to share a lot of her thoughts with me. And I loved that story. I agree. It does add a lot to a viewing of it. And I know absolutely for a fact that, in my mind at least, that David Lynch counted the number of times that his eyes darted back and forth between the cigarette and Diane's face.
Absolutely.
But yeah, getting a sense of how a scene like that was kind of birthed. There's a couple other examples too in the book. It was a real pleasure. Those kind of like unexpected delights that you stumble into from, being fortunate enough to talk to some people.
I really like too the way you talked about Lynch as an actor on someone else's film versus Lynch on it as an actor in his own thing, where he knows the lines because he wrote the lines and it's a much more comfortable thing. But there's a lot of nerves, at least in the beginning in those early performances, when he has to shoot for someone else. I'm wondering, like, looking through all of the people that you talked to, do you think he was confident in his ability as an actor in someone else's world?
It's a good question, and there's no single opinion. There's a lot of diversity of opinion, in fact, from people who knew him well. Some people in the book, and that's, I have no problem putting those at odds things together. Some people said, oh yeah, he was totally at ease, never saw him sweat, made total sense. Other people say, oh yeah, he was very nervous. I think that the truth is somewhere in between, is that he was very comfortable in the world of Twin Peaks because that's a world he co-created. I think all the stuff that he did on the website was because he was generating that content himself. He was very comfortable with it. And so I guess actually circling back to kind of, I deeply considered what I call these buckets of reasons that Lynch acted. And I don't necessarily think that they're the end all be all, but one of the ones is basically he had a personal connection to it. If it's a project that he was working on with friends and family. The second one was really an intellectual curiosity or an experiential desire, right? He was a guy who, when he wanted to learn something new or try something new, he would lean into it. Hence, he wants to learn about animation, so he starts making Dumbland himself and doing all the voices and stuff.
This is how it's gonna be. You're gonna stay here and watch your Uncle Bob.
Then it's also really advancing or either connecting himself or with others, the spirit of the art life. And so I think things that reminded him of that in his own life, sometimes he would do. I think that's why he appears in these Brazilian short films in the way of Sam Adelkin, a very obscure, hardcore art house Russian film. But the biggest one is maybe like this gives him a way to express his sense of humor. I knew that because so many of his performances have an element of humor in them. But that was something that took a lot of shape the more I kind of researched the book and the more I wrote about these things. So I'm stumbling and expanding upon my answer here, but those were all things that, to my mind, informed why he chose to act, and I think to varying degrees informed his level of comfort on different projects.
It is interesting, the choices that he makes. Like you mentioned, he was in the Cleveland show for a number of years.
That'll be $3 American.
You should pour smaller drinks so you can get more out of every bottle and make more money.
So you're saying by putting less alcohol in each drink, I could make more money? Does every bar know about this?
And he was on Family Guy.
We now return to How David Lynch Stole Christmas.
Hello. I got you a present. It's a thumb.
Huh?
Don't look away. Let the fear wash over you.
I don't understand.
That's the whole point. Now, did you leave a plate of black coffee out for me?
No.
In the future, please leave a plate of black coffee out for me. Also in the past.
But I know, like Gravity Falls, I don't know if did they ever ask. I think he was asked to do Gravity Falls and he said no.
He was asked. Yeah, he was asked and he said no. And that was kind of one that is frequently commented upon. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But it's interesting, like what he chooses. But you mentioned sense of humor, and you talk very briefly about On the Air. But you said one thing that I just want to get a little bit more information on, and it was about Mark Frost and On the Air, where you'd said basically Mark Frost wasn't really involved. Is that the case? Because I know he wrote the first episode with David Lynch, and then he's the only credited writer on the second. But was he not really involved in that production?
He, based on my research, and there's some other research out there, David Bushman, did a book, Conversations with Mark Frost. Yes, he was involved in the scripting and development, but yes, not really the production. At that point, I think it's pretty well documented. There was a little bit of a fraying in the relationship between David and Mark. And I don't think they were, at each other's throats necessarily, but I think both of them were eager to work on things that they had more singular control over, perhaps. So it's my understanding and belief based on the research I did that, Mark didn't have a lot of involvement in the actual physical production of those.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, anytime you have a creative partnership, there's a tons of stress. And I can't imagine the success of Twin Peaks and then the way that it crashed. And they probably had been working on the scripts at one point, and then by the time they got to the production. But I am curious to know what David Lynch thought of On the Air, because he doesn't really talk about it a lot.
Yeah.
Not that I've seen. And, in Room to Dream, it comes up a little bit, but not a lot. And to hear that Mark wasn't involved, it makes me think maybe he really did like it. And he was like, this is full on David Lynch's humor. It kind of feels that way. And you watch like Dumbland, and like he has this very interesting, low humor. Like there's literally fart sounds in the beginning of the On the Air thing. So like,
yes. Yeah.
To me, that feels right. But then somebody commented on one of my posts that said David Lynch didn't like On the Air and didn't want it shown. So then I was like, well, is that true? Is that not true? I didn't know if you knew anything.
I think we may have seen one of the same posts, or I may have seen that response about the inclusion of it on a box set or a screening series. I think I do know for a fact that he screened that for, one night for some of his assistants up at his house, right? Because they had no frame of reference or knowledge for it. When this was exactly, I don't know. I think it was probably early 2000 to mid 2000s, or between say 2004 and 2010 at some point. That he just, obviously he had a copy of it and he said, oh yeah, and threw it on one night and they all sat around and watched it. And, of course, his assistants loved it, and they were like, oh, my God. So I think I don't think he was ashamed of it or anything like that. But you're right. It's because it has not been commercially available. It and something like Hotel Room, these have really suffered because, they're not out there and widely available for people to see.
Yeah,
certainly
that
not
drives
in
me crazy.
Yeah, certainly not in a very pleasant to view
right
format. I mean, I have a copy that's on VHS, and not great.
Right. It's like I have the same. Everybody's like, it's on archive.org. I don't want it on archive.org.
Right.
Like why did we build this prison that has no value for our artists and creators? Like, he's one of the greatest filmmakers in history, in my opinion. And yet you can't, like, it should at least be preserved for time and for study and everything else. And it coming out after Twin Peaks, you got Angelo doing the music. I mean, it just makes me nuts, but
yeah.
And Hotel Room too. Like, that's even harder to find. Like, I think that's on archive.org as well, but the copy there is terrible.
Yeah.
It's just a shame. It's like, why don't we, I don't know, to me, it seems like it would be easy money.
I'm hopeful that will change. I think
Yeah.
it may just take some time. Yeah, but I don't think that their lack of availability necessarily says something about his opinion, David Lynch's opinion of his work.
100%. And I will say, like, I don't want to say, I talked to people that were close to him. I'll say that. And I did not get the impression that he didn't like it at all. Like,
Yeah.
so I just got that one thing, and then that threw me off because I would not want to be pushing something that I thought he didn't want out there. But it doesn't, I would agree with you. I don't think that's the case.
Monica was very pleasant. She had brought friends. We all had a coffee.
Man, there's one mystery too in your book that came out that I won't keep you much longer. That the guy that's in the dream sequence in Paris, nobody knows who that guy is. Did I read that correctly? Because I apologies for people that have listened to the show. I thought it was Toscan. What's the woman's name?
Melita Toscan Duplantier. Yes.
Toscan Duplantier. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I said it was her husband or something. I thought, but you talked to her and she has no recollection,
right,
of that guy. Who is that guy?
She doesn't know, or didn't know, and that was one of those cases because I think I make the claim in the book. Look, I made multiple attempts to track down every living performer who shared a scene with him. And then at a certain point, you're like, man, this is really a stretch. When people who actually share the frame don't know who this guy was. I got a little bit of information, but some of it was conflicting. So
he may be the dreamer. I think
he
this
may,
whole time
he may be. He's the key to understanding all of Twin Peaks. My God.
When his book drops, yeah.
That's right.
Oh my God. Yeah, that cracked me up. There's like, I have no recollection. I was like, wait a minute, what? Okay.
Yeah.
Before you were Denise, when you were Dennis, and I was your boss, when I had you working undercover at the DEA, you were a confused and wild thing sometimes. I had enough dirt on you to fill the Grand Canyon, and I never used a spoonful because you were and are a great agent. And when you became Denise, I told all your colleagues, those clown comics, to fix their hearts or die.
Some of your stuff that you talked with Jennifer Lynch was some of the best stuff in the book. Like, you went over the whole
fantastic,
Denise stuff and and all of the stuff about. I knew that she was born with a club foot because they've talked about that. I didn't realize he had a foot issue, and how that tied the two of them together.
I was really blessed by Jennifer Lynch, and I'll be forever grateful for her candor and her kind of trust in me at a very vulnerable moment. Her being willing to talk about her recollections about some of her dad's work. And I knew always that I wanted to write a separate chapter, sort of break out smaller chapter on the Fix Your Hearts or Die, because that's taken on this sociocultural relevance that I think extends far beyond the show. And I don't feel it's an exaggeration to say that's like it's a beacon, it's a magnet. It is going to draw, it has drawn, I know, people into Twin Peaks. And I think it will continue to draw people to Twin Peaks, but also David Lynch's work more broadly. And talking to her about it was a very interesting experience because she shared some things about her dad that I don't think have been ever really reported anywhere else, where it gave a very personal connection to that line. And she talked about her view of why he was able to connect so readily to people who felt othered, or people who had a physical deformity, a la John Merrick in The Elephant Man. And that was news to me. It was an emotional conversation the two of us had. And it was really wonderful. And I can't thank her enough for sharing that, because I think that only makes that scene more, it only makes it deeper. Having additional information about it, about the context of it, I think really deepens my appreciation for it. And as I mentioned, when I first saw it in 2017, my mouth dropped open. Right? It just struck me immediately as wow.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people had that same reaction.
She's that you're talking with her, like, she really does open up, and she's such a great person. Obviously, I don't know her personally, but she's in so much pain. You can see, still grieving the loss of her father, but she's interacting with so many fans. Yes. And making so many people happy by just dropping 3 hearts on someone's comment that's making a video about the secret diary of Laura Palmer or her father or whatever. Yep. And you just see that she's just spreading so much love everywhere. It's very moving. And then to see that going on, and then to read the way that she was talking to you and what she was sharing, just made me like her even more. It was just good to hear that. Had you talked to her prior, like in your years of interviewing people?
I had. It's funny because we talked about that, where I was like, wow, it had been a long time since I talked to her, but I did for certainly for one of her films, Surveillance. I'd interviewed her, and then honestly, I can't remember if I may have spoken to her in like a roundtable interview for another thing, but for Surveillance, I had spoken to her one-on-one, but that was many years ago, obviously. So it was fantastic to get a chance to reconnect with her. And yeah, she's a wonderful person. And as you noted, I think she's going forth and sort of carrying the banner for a lot of what her dad put out in the world, which was just like love and positivity.
Yeah, and it's beautiful stuff to watch.
Yeah.
I loved your book. I think everybody should buy your book. If it was only about David Lynch, the actor, I would say buy it. But you learned so much stuff. I didn't even cover half the things that your book's going to cover tonight.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I mean, it was truly a labor of love. And that's, I couldn't or wouldn't have written a book like this if I didn't have love and admiration for the subject. As I point out in the book, I don't think that I know I wasn't a friend of his or anything like that, but having interviewed him so many times, spanning such a long period of time, like, I feel like I got a sense of who he was, and that only made me appreciate him and his art even more. And I hope that comes through in the book, because it was always meant to be something that chronicled all of this work in a really, fun and loving way. And it gets into, all these kind of like little details that are pretty wild. But I did want to give equal billing, if you will, especially after his passing. But even really before that, I knew that I wanted to talk to all these collaborators, the people that worked with him and shared the scenes with him, and weren't just the big main obvious collaborators, but like the woman who played the maid in Louis and stuff like that.
Tell me about your parents.
Oh, well, my mother was actually a dancer.
Really? What kind of dancer was she?
She was in the ballet.
Really? Did she dance around the house a lot?
I don't know. I don't remember much. She died when I was 8.
Oh, this is terrific. Just wonderful. Tune in every night, folks. It's the Crying Cleaning Lady Show.
Talking to people who literally worked with David Lynch for 6 hours, 4 hours, 2 hours, half an hour, and being struck by who he was as a person. And in fact, like, sometimes being emotional about that connection. And some of those interviews took place before he passed away. And that was really fascinating to me. And something that I knew I always wanted to be a piece of the book too.
Well, it's beautiful. I'm glad you brought up that maid, because that is also such a great part of the book, because if I'm remembering correctly, she doesn't really have a connection to David Lynch's. She's not like a fan.
No.
They do this shoot together over the course of a few days, I think, right? They don't spend that much time together.
She had one day. She basically had an afternoon.
One day. And she's moved and touched by him in the interactions that they have. And that happens over and over and over again with all of the people that you talk to. I mean, with the exception of Harley Payton, who clearly they have some history. And it's not negative. Like, he talks highly about him too. But as far as like a personal connection, so many people connected with him and were moved by him and still holds all of that love for him, that it's very moving on its own, especially after he passed.
That was another thing that I wanted to try to address a little bit in the final chapter, because like so many other people, I was devastated by his loss, but I was struck by the online discourse where there were so many younger people who were younger and had no frame of reference for him as a theatrical filmmaker, right? Like, his last theatrically released film, Inland Empire, was 2006. Yeah. So these people had never. They may have discovered his work prior to Twin Peaks: The Return, or prior to him passing even, but they didn't grow up going to see David Lynch movies in a theater. And the degree to which they felt it deeply and personally and talked through their feelings online, that was tremendously moving to me. To have all these people who, so many of them, like creative, yourself, graphic novelists, painters, musicians, people who homecraft and other stuff, all these people who have creative interests and outlets talk about, wow, he was a creative North Star for me, even though obviously they didn't meet him, but he felt like family to them.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And now you're carrying that tradition now and spreading the love through this book that really is a moving book, and it's just worth your time.
You all think of a tortoise as something slow, but I think about the burden he has to carry on his back. Yeah, it's for protection, but ultimately it's the coffin he's going to get buried in. And he has to drag that thing around his entire life? Go ahead and laugh. But he affected me. You know what I'm saying? He affected me. There are some things in this universe, ladies and gentlemen, that are bigger than all of us. And a tortoise is one of them.
Did you ever talk to anyone twice, before and after? And was that a big seismic shift between, or did anyone change anything or add anything? I think you mentioned maybe they did after he passed. They may have wanted to add something on.
Right. Yes. Some people I interviewed only once. But yeah, there were a number of folks that I spoke to multiple times, and some, yes, that I spoke to before he passed, and then again after. Jonathan Sanger, many others. I mean, once he passed, I knew you could look. That's the elephant in the room. You can't leave it unaddressed. And that's the last chapter, right, where we talk about legacy and I try to go back to these people that knew him really well and touch upon that and incorporate their thoughts and feelings, because they were fantastic enough to share their time and perspective with me. So I knew that was a place that I wanted to land it. But really briefly, like to your earlier point, yeah, talking to the woman Polina Nikiforova, who plays the maid in Louis, as you said, tremendously moved by this one brief interaction with David Lynch. As she talks about how he, sat with her and helped her get on the phone when she was trying to call her son and all this stuff. And I think what it speaks to is, and there's other examples throughout the book, that even in a brief amount of time, what these people experienced was David Lynch being super present. And you hear a lot of actors talk about like what makes a good actor. It's not acting, it's reacting to what the other person is giving you, just being present. And that's what David Lynch had, right? Like he wasn't formally trained as an actor or even interested in, he was never going to be the guy that's like, well, let me try on a French accent or a Spanish accent. I really want to disappear into the role. That wasn't him. But still, the acting said something about him. And I think it reflected just how comfortable he was being present for these people. And they noticed that. They picked up on that.
Right. Okay. So there are 5 cowboys.
No. Where's the goddamn horizon?
It's there.
Where?
At the top of the painting.
All right, get over here. Now remember this. When the horizon's at the bottom, it's interesting. When the horizon's at the top, it's interesting. When the horizon's in the middle, it's boring as shit. Now, good luck to you. And get the fuck out of my office.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
It would have been a different thing if he had lived and been able to participate. I would have loved, obviously, to have had that.
Yeah, oh, that would have been great. But it's kind of perfect. Not that there's ever a perfect world in which, he's gone and you don't get to talk to him. But you're like the perfect person to write it in this moment anyway. You have this history with him. You're building a book before he passes. So you've got all this momentum. You've got all these interviews. And then you're there on the other side of it. How many people have all of a foot in all of those things, from the pre-grieving to the post-grieving, and then all of your love, and then all of your history with them, and like, who else could put this book together but you? It was like, if someone was going to come up with this book, it was going to be you at that moment. Like, it's really, really magical.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and yeah, it's as I think I quasi-mentioned in the book, like it's an object lesson that, life is what happens when you're busy making plans, right? And you want it to be one thing, and then you can experience heartbreak when something else happens. But man, if you open yourself up to that change, whatever change it is, there's a beauty in it. And I certainly found plenty of beauty talking to so many wonderful people and getting to write about it.
Well, that's the perfect way to end it. Thank you again, Brent. This was such a great talk. I hope you had a good time. And
I did. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So your job now is to follow that link, use the code, give yourself a little something extra for the road, and grab it.
Every day, once a day, give yourself a present.
Thank you for listening to the Meanwhile podcast with Dan Johnson and Eric Grissom. If you would like to support the Meanwhile podcast, join our Patreon. It's available right now. You can sign up, and for just a few dollars a month, you can keep this show going, and you can get access to some exclusive podcasts and some secret stuff that you're not going to find anywhere else. So if you'd like to join, go to ericgrissom.com/meanwhile and look for the Patreon link. If you like our show, please consider rating and reviewing the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're hearing this now. Meanwhile is produced by Eric Grissom and Where's My Robots? The Meanwhile theme song is written and performed by Paul Finn and Evening Pines. If you want to let us know what you thought of the show, you can reach Dan at danjnj.com, both on the web and on Blue Sky. Eric can be found on Blue Sky at ericgrissom.com, which is also his website. It's also me, right? That's weird. We'll see you again. And in the meantime, be good.
Listen to the sounds.
Meanwhile.